Thank you all again for coming tonight. My name is Daniel Ajamian. I'm chair of County Commissioner District 5. Peggy Littleton has invited some of her colleagues to help her out with this. So we're going to have Commissioner Lathan with the invocation and Gail Wise, who's Secretary of County Commissioner District 5, with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. Would you all please join me as we begin our meeting in prayer? Heavenly Father, tonight I wish to thank you for all of the blessings that you give us, each and every one of us here in this room and throughout our community, each and every day. Father, tonight I ask that you would bless this gathering. Bless us with wisdom. Bless us with the courage to fight for the things that we believe in, that we believe are sanctioned by you and blessed by you in this nation of ours. We just ask for your assistance as we go forward in a fight to protect human liberty. And we thank you, Lord, for all of the provisions that you give us every day. I ask these things in the name of my Lord. Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in welcoming County Commissioner Peggy Littleton.
Our microphones work here. Our lavaliers, we might have to go with the other ones. Are we on? There we go. All right. We'll just make sure that they're working here. I want to welcome all of you this evening. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules that you have. And I wanted to just start off with a couple of things that I wanted to introduce that you can pick up on your way out, if you will. I'm going to have you sit right over there in that chair. Okay, thanks. Some of you got these when you came in, but in case you didn't, many of you know that in addition to protecting our Second Amendment rights, one of the things that I'm very concerned about is making sure that everybody is personally prepared. You should have picked up your yo-yo, your on your own sheet, because quite honestly, you are your own first responder, and we're going to be working together on what a community response looks like in being prepared this next year. There were also some magnets up there, and hopefully you all picked those up. If you didn't get these on the way in, please make sure and pick them up on the way out. Go on your refrigerator, all of your important phone numbers that you should dial immediately after making sure that you're responding to your own situation in your home or wherever you would happen to be. I would also like to take, I don't know if Commissioner Heisey is here. I thought he was going to be. So you were supposed to lead the pledge for us. Okay, all right. So Commissioner Heisey is joining us this evening as well. So I want to thank my colleagues for joining me this evening during this very special time. Now, each of you were handed a pencil and some note cards this evening as you walked in. Because I knew we were going to have such a large crowd tonight, and speaking of a large crowd, there are empty seats down here. So I want you to go ahead, be brave, be bold. It's kind of like getting to church late. If you're late, you get to sit in the front. So come on down, fill in the seats, because I don't want you to have to stand the whole entire time that you're here tonight. So come on down, come on, filter down. If you guys want to scoot towards the centers and let people come down the aisles and join you on the aisles, that'd be fantastic. These pencils and cards are for you to write down questions. Now if you've already handed your question in, don't worry about it. But I'd kind of like you to keep your card in your hand for just a few minutes, because in a while, Sheriff Makita is going to begin talking about some of the different bills that are up at the legislature that you want to know information about. And it would be helpful as we sort some of the cards to see if we get 15, 20, 25 cards that have a similar question. We can put those in a particular, is it 1224 that you're talking about, or which bill might you be referring to? If you need more cards, raise your hand. I have card runners everywhere. There's some right over here. Here, who else is a card runner over here? Sandy, raise your hand. Is a card runner? Okay, if you need a card, raise your hand. If you need a pencil, they'll be walking around to give them to you. Please only put one question on the card. If you need multiple cards, we'd rather do it that way because we don't want to go, okay, answer that question and not get to your second or third questions. Okay, everybody know the rules of engagement for that? Okay, and they will be down here at the front at any point in time. If you think I need another card, raise your hand, and they'll be watching all evening to be able to distribute those cards. Now, I wanted to take just a moment to begin our evening just reading the resolution in defense of the Second Amendment that our Board of County Commissioners actually adopted back on January 22nd of 2013, just to set the stage for this evening. So the resolution in defense of the Second Amendment writes, whereas the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution provides that a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and to bear arms shall not be infringed. And whereas the right to arms and self-defense is recognized in state constitutions, and whereas the natural and unalienable, now I will tell you that constitutional attorneys or constitutional scholars say that it should be unalienable. Unalienable is something that cannot be given away, sold, purchased. It is an unalienable, or we would say unalienable, right, given and endowed to us by our Creator. We have an unalienable right to self-defense. It is well established in the writings of many philosophers and authors since ancient times of Greece and Rome. And whereas for centuries tyrants have recognized that a disarmed population is readily dominated, and whereas the Second Amendment protects the rights of self-defense, defense of others, and defense of the nation, and assumes the rights to hunting and sport shooting. And whereas it is estimated that more than 70 million people, representing more than half of the households in America, have chosen to lawfully exercise the right to bear arms and to defend themselves and their families. And whereas many gun control laws implicitly assume the guilt of lawful and responsible firearms owners with little effect on the ability of criminals to obtain firearms and use them unlawfully. And whereas the vast majority of all lawfully owned firearms in America are not used in crime. And whereas statistically, lawful gun owners are less likely to break the law than the average member of the public. And whereas in 2008, the United States Supreme Court in District of Columbia, District of Columbia versus Heller, sorry about that, ruled that the Second Amendment protects an individual's, rather than a collective, but an individual's right to keep and bear arms. And in 2010, in McDonald versus the City of Chicago, the Supreme Court further opined that the right of an individual to keep and bear arms protected by the Second Amendment is incorporated by the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment that applies to the states. And whereas studies by the National Academies of Science and the Centers for Disease Control have found no persuasive evidence that gun control laws actually reduce crime. And whereas today Americans are safer from violent crime than they have been since any time in the mid-1960s. Now therefore, be it resolved that the El Paso County Commissioners, the state of Colorado, will uphold the Second Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, and we will act in conformity with our sworn duties as duly elected officials charged with the public trust, and we will, in conjunction with prior decisions by the United States Supreme Court, not enforce any statutes, edicts, presidential directives, or other regulations or proclamations which conflict and are expressly preempted by the U.S. Supreme Court's rulings. The Board of El Paso County Commissioners strongly urges the United States Senate to reject international treaties that would infringe upon the Second Amendment rights of American citizens, including the United Nations Arms Trade Treaty, the Inter-American Convention Against Illicit Manufacturing of Trafficking and Firearms, or the UN Program of Action, and that neither the United States Congress nor the Colorado General Assembly of the state of Colorado should entertain consideration of any new legislation that would infringe on constitutionally protected rights under the Second Amendment through any means, including additional restrictions on lawful firearms and accessories, or on the possession, use, sale, or transfer of legitimately owned firearms. And be it further resolved that the El Paso County Board of County Commissioners calls upon the United States Congress and the Colorado General Assembly to recognize the multitudes of existing laws related to the manufacture, sale, and possession of firearms, and acknowledge that in order to combat gun violence, the country must enforce existing laws and more effectively punish and deter those who commit those crimes. Done this 22nd day of January 2013 at Colorado Springs, Colorado, the Board of County Commissioners of El Paso County, Dennis Heisey, Chair, Amy Latham, Vice Chair, Sally Clark, Daryl Glenn, and Peggy Littleton. I can tell from the response this evening that this might just be the safest room to be in all of El Paso County. So I was a little frustrated today when I had to go from being up in Denver all day long at a Colorado Emergency Preparedness Partnership event straight down to Fort Carson, and I had to take a moment and stop at the office for a few minutes before I went on to Fort Carson. And so I think you can appreciate that if you know what I'm saying. We had the wonderful opportunity last Saturday to do the Annie Get Your Gun Day, and of course it was a blizzard. We had just a couple of ladies show up who braved the blizzard to go out between 11:30 and 1:30 with me to go shoot at our new Cheyenne Mountain shooting range. So in case you don't know, on the second Saturday of every month, girls, it's free. Bring your guy and it's only $10 for him. So, love to have you out there. It is a nice range. It's a very, very nice range. Now, I wanted to let all of you know this is going to be YouTube the entire meeting, so you will be able to access this on the El Paso County website. It is also being live streamed for those people who could not join us tonight for one reason or the other. Now, this evening, as you're writing your questions on some of your cards, we will be collecting those down the aisles, bringing them down. Jackie Kirby and Dave Rose will be going through those, putting them in piles of like questions. We have Skyla is going to be our timer tonight. Eventually, if we get through all of the questions, we'll go ahead and we'll open up the mic and take questions from the crowd. And I have a couple of folks that are going to be my mic runners tonight as well. Skyla will give you 30 seconds to ask your question. So in order to really just make sure that everybody has time to address questions, this is not a night, unfortunately, for grandstanding. I know that out here we're probably preaching to the choir for a lot of us. Some of us are here because they're just curious about what gun people look like. And so we want to welcome everybody. So she's going to be our 30-second timer, letting us know when your time is up, and we will gently pull the mic away from you as you are finishing your question. So make sure it's a question, not a statement this evening. So without further ado, I wanted to take a moment, and we'll stop in between questions. I'll read the question tonight, then we'll have Sheriff Makita address the question. But first, I want to start off with Sheriff Makita having an opportunity to go through each one of the bills and to tell us what are the ramifications of those bills. Where are they? We updated today. We looked, what is the latest version that either is A, going to the governor, or B, going either back to the House or the Senate, so that you know where those bills are in process, what they're about. If you have a little piece of paper, you can do a cheat sheet to remind yourself of what number that bill is and what it pertains to. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome my guest for this evening that I've invited to come share with us, Sheriff Terry Makita.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you very much. This has been an amazing week and a half, I guess. Just seeing what's going on at the Capitol. I was up there a week ago Monday when these bills were introduced in the Senate Local Affairs and Judicial Committee, and what I witnessed there really just struck me as an injustice. Unfortunately, because of the process put in place, I was only allowed to testify on one bill. I had prepared, and with the dedicated assistance of my wife, my home staffer, PIO, researcher, I went to the Capitol with facts and data and some quotes to really lay a hard case down, and wasn't given that opportunity. And since then, I have been standing up for what I believe in and what I believe is right, and that is that government is starting to bully citizens. I'm sorry to say that. I'm embarrassed, but that is what's happening. And so one of the things I want to say is I'm not going to stand up here and proclaim to know every detail of every bill, because quite frankly, if you've been following the Sheriff's Office website, the media, radio shows both locally and nationally, I've been out speaking and trying to affect change. I've been talking to people about bringing litigation against the state of Colorado, at least on two fronts, and doing my homework. So I'm going to give you just a quick synopsis of where we're at, how I interpret them, and some of these bills are so poorly written, probably because they had just legislative input and not citizen input, but they're so poorly written, I don't even know what they're trying to say. But I'm going to do the best I can. Don't expect me to tell you exactly what happened to 1228 or 197 or any of those today, because I was busy working on my computer, sticking up for your rights, my children's rights, and my grandchildren's rights. I don't get to do this very often, but there's two groups of people I want to introduce that just happen to be spending their spring break, and I guess you would say retired vacation here in Colorado Springs during the week. I picked to totally invest myself in this fight. I have my nephews, River and Bridger. River's down here at the front, Bridger up there in the back. And they are actually on spring break from Alaska, accompanying my mother, who lives in Alaska. Thanks for being here, Mom. So I had to do that. I don't get to say hi, Mom, too often, so it's kind of neat. But we also have another person in the audience. I would like to stand up. Dennis, would you stand up? Just stand for a minute, because this is one of the familiar faces I saw at the Capitol a week ago Monday that I did not expect to see. Never thought I would see him up there, not to say that he's not a patriot and a true American, but this individual went to the Capitol to be heard, and he is one of those I saw that was not heard. He is also one I spoke to and asked, "What brought you here today?" And he said, "I don't know, I just felt I needed to do something. I couldn't stand by, and so I came up here in hopes of being heard," and he was not heard. Thank you. Sorry to single you out like that, but you're the person I've been talking about that drove up in horrible traffic. I'll tell you, I sat on the interstate a long time to go be heard and wasn't heard, and he's another one, and there were hundreds and hundreds just like him. Exactly, way to go. Way to go. I'd like to also say that my eyes are just as young as they once were, but they're not, so I'll have to put on my aids. They're over 40s. I feel like I held out until about 43, 44, so I felt I was doing pretty good, but it's catching up to me now. I'll start I'll start first with the bills that are no longer being pursued, but then I'm watching very closely because I don't like the way they pulled the bills, and that is, let's see if I have the title, 1226, which was the concealed carry on campus. I was prepared to fight this one tooth and nail, did not have a chance, as well as probably the most ludicrous, illegal bill brought before the legislature in my 13 years of being active, and that was Senate Bill 196, titled the Assault Weapon Responsibility Act. That bill in of itself classified every firearm, with the exception of a handgun, a shotgun, and a bolt-action rifle, as an assault weapon. I thought it was a total abuse of legislative authority, and I think it was well known that it should have been pulled before it was introduced. Those two have been postponed until May 10th of this year. Now, usually when you kill a bill, it's either killed in committee by a vote or it's postponed indefinitely. This one concerns me because it says postponed until May 10th, both of these, the Concealed Carry on College and the Responsibility Act, which is a horrible title for it. But the reason I'm concerned is because it doesn't say indefinitely. It gives a specific date, what happens to be one day beyond the end of the planned legislative session. Now, having seen what I witnessed up at the Capitol so far in this session, I would not put it by them to ask for the governor to extend the session and possibly keep it alive long enough to where they can cram it through without citizen input and testimony of people that know it's the wrong thing to do. So I'll be watching those very closely. Like I said, it should have been suspended indefinitely. It was not. And that causes me concern. It's another deviation from the standard. The ones that are still alive and going through and in a various form, we had, I think it was 3 introduced in the Senate on Monday. We also had bills that were introduced in the House, cleared the House, moved to the Senate. They went through the Senate and were approved, and I think only one was sent back to the House because of amendments made at the Senate. That is standard procedure. There's no doubt in my mind the House will accept those amendments, and those amendments will then be forwarded to that bill will be forwarded to the governor along with the others. There is still going to be a battle in the House with the Senate bills that began in the Senate, so we'll be watching those real closely as well and trying to get the information out. I can tell you, I think the House has been a little more responsible with allowing citizen input. I know they've had a couple very controversial bills that they sat through all day of testimony to make sure that citizens, those electors that put those people in power at the legislature, had their say. So I commend at least the House for showing a little ethical fortitude with this lawmaking. To get into the meat of it now, and I want to say this. Do not treat me as the bearer of bad news and punish me. I don't agree with these. I'm fighting against them. It's an emotional issue, and we're here to educate everybody so they have a good sense of where we're at and some of the concerns with these bills. But remember, we're all on each other's side, and I would say this hall is full of law-abiding citizens, and that's why you're here tonight. The criminals aren't here to find out what they can do and can't do. I promise you that. All right, the first one is the background check. It was sold as a universal background check. I hate to tell our legislators this, but we already have a universal background check. We also have a background check on the loophole. This bill was targeting the private sales from one individual to another. The consequence of it is it went a little far because it was probably poorly written. I wouldn't put it by the legislature to intentionally do this, but a scenario as simple as me going out of town on a business trip or whatever the case may be and leaving a firearm for my wife. If I purchased that firearm, it was mine, and I leave it for my wife to protect herself. If I'm gone more than 72 hours, I had to have a background check on her. I think that's absolutely ludicrous. And I'll tell you what, the Supreme Court came out when the feds tried instituting a private party background check and said Congress is overstepping its bounds. It cannot insert itself on private party sales, and it cannot ask or mandate FFL holders to conduct those background checks for a transaction that it's not a party to. And I think Colorado needs to take a serious look at that as well. This is your private property rights, and some of the reaching, I noticed they started adding people in, children, grandchildren, uncles, aunts, mother, father, grandmother, grandfather. But the bottom line is it's a law that will criminalize more law-abiding citizens than criminals. And that's exactly what I told the Senate committee, that anytime we pass a law that has a higher probability of criminalizing people, innocent, law-abiding citizens that never set out to break the law, we have a problem. And it's those people that will suffer, it's those people that will pay, not the criminals, because they're not worried about background checks. I know that shocks so many people, but that's a fact. That bill is 1229, the background check one. The next one I'll go through is the domestic violence bill. This one really bothered me because there was no statistical backing behind it. Let me share something else with you I found out late last week. There's a part of each bill. When it's introduced, it goes through a legal review, it goes through an appropriate or a fiscal impact requirement, and then it's amended based on those two reviews, and then it's introduced with a bill title, which is typically the number of the bill. This one is Senate Bill 197. This one is to target domestic violence offenders, and what bothers me is the average citizen around this state and even around the country will hear, okay, wait a minute, domestic violence, yeah, that's a bad thing. You know what, we should keep an eye on those people. But in its original format, it required law enforcement to confiscate weapons. The sheriffs throughout the state of Colorado said absolutely not. It's a violation of search and seizure. It's a violation of due process. And there is absolutely no way we will support it. Matter of fact, we will contest it all the way. And if that means bringing legal action, if it's passed, we'll do that as well. Well, they quickly removed that piece of it. But the parts that still concern me is a requirement, and they took it out of the hands of law enforcement, which I thought was pretty crafty. Number one, the title makes sense, and I've been saying this. They put a title on that people go, oh, okay, this targets a certain group of people. But what it does is it oversteps just sheer domestic violence. And I'm not going to stand up here and condone any kind of violence against any person, whether you know the person, intimate with the person or not. That is wrong. But we also know that in relationships there will be emotions, and in law enforcement we see the broadest spectrum of it, from a simple argument to an actual homicide. And this law has a broad brush. It actually starts infringing on people's personal property rights before conviction. And I think that's very important because our whole system, and I don't always agree with it, but it is our system that you are innocent until proven guilty. And you are proven guilty based on a threshold of beyond a reasonable doubt. Well, when the courts start placing orders and passing laws that basically upon arrest, and once a restraining order is put in effect, or they use the word a civil protective order is put into effect, then they mandate that that person show proof to the courts that they disposed of all firearms, all ammunition, within 24 hours. They make exceptions to 48 hours, and if you're incarcerated and you get permission from the judge, you can have up to 72 hours. Well, let's talk about the 3 ways to dispose of those weapons. Number 1, leave them with law enforcement, which can charge a real cost, an actual cost, it can't be inflated, an actual cost for the storage of those weapons and ammunition. Law enforcement has to provide a receipt that you have taken possession, that they have possession of those firearms and that ammunition. The other way is to go to an FFL, a federal firearms license dealer, and have that dealer take possession and store those weapons for a period of time. Or the individual, now remember, this is all before you're convicted. Let me remind you of that. Or you can take those weapons and sell them. This is what the law is mandating. Sell them to a private party, but you have to show a receipt of that sale as well as a background check conducted on the person you sell it to. Now, I've been in the criminal justice system for over 25 years. I'm going to tell you, it's not an easy system. And here is my logical thought with it. If a person is arrested on domestic violence, the person that committed the crime, whether it was through harassment, which is a misdemeanor, third-degree assault, misdemeanor, criminal mischief, breaking their own property, misdemeanor, they're going to be arrested. They're going to be placed in the custody of the El Paso County Jail if they're in El Paso County, and they're going to be held without bond until the PC for the arrest is reviewed by a judge and they see a judge and have their rights explained to them. At that point, they can bond out. Now, here's my logic behind this bill. Let's just use the example of a man. A man is arrested because him and his wife got in a domestic dispute. He sees the wedding picture. She says, "Don't touch that." He takes it and says, we're done anyway, and breaks it. And then says, "I'm leaving the house because it's getting too emotional. We need to calm things down." He's going to jail for criminal mischief. We're going to let him post bond, which he's still trying to get his hands around what he did wrong. And he's going to appear before a judge. He's going to told, you cannot go back to the house. You cannot have contact with your spouse. You cannot have contact with your kids. And you need to take all your firearms and ammunition and dispose of them in these 3 ways, the 3 ways I just explained. That individual is going to leave out of jail. Number one, he's going to try to figure out if they still have a job or contact their boss to make sure everything's still okay there. And then he's going to try to figure out where's he going to live, how's he going to get his clothes. And during all this, and here's the bizarre logic I cannot fathom. It's an emotional time. He's very confused. He's not allowed to see his spouse, his house, his dog, his children. He has to go to that house, collect his weapons and ammunition. Is this not, I'm sorry. I mean, you're laughing. I'm beyond the laughing stage. I'm trying to wrap my hands around the stupidity behind this. We're going to take an emotional charge situation and further emotionally charge it by telling him, violate federal law, which says you're not supposed to be in possession of a firearm. Get your firearms and go out and sell them on the streets to an FFL dealer or drop them off with law enforcement. Do you think this is well thought out and in the best interest of law-abiding citizens? This law is being proposed, as some of those people up north will say, to prevent another Sandy Hook, to prevent a Columbine, to prevent an Aurora. Do you think it has anything to do with Aurora, Sandy Hook? Thank you. I was beginning to think I was crazy and missing the point of all this. It's ridiculous. I do believe it's going to get passed. And I was prepared to make those exact comments in the committee hearings, but I was not given that opportunity like many of our citizens. The next bill is the magazine limitation, large capacity. Anything 15 rounds or more cannot be sold after the date the law takes effect, which would be July 1 if the governor signs it. The governor plans to sign all these bills. I know he led us to believe that he's open-minded and he'll give it consideration. All right. Okay, let me finish, and we'll have a cheering squad for comments like that, because I agree with you. But let's talk about large capacity magazines. This bill says any company that manufactures them in Colorado has to serial number, date stamp them. It says it's illegal for a Colorado resident in the state of Colorado to purchase one or have one traded, bought, purchased, given, whatever, after this law goes into effect July 1 of this year. I mean, that's the basic premise of it. And again, the logic behind it is because we want to avoid a Sandy Hook or a Columbine or a Virginia Tech or an Aurora Theater shooting in Colorado. So we're going to ban these magazines. Is what they failed to address, and is what they can address, is the fact that there are hundreds of thousands of these magazines floating around. If you're a Colorado resident, drive to Wyoming, because their legislature has courage to say, no, we're not going to be manipulated by these. And those of you living in this state that don't like it, move to another state where they do like it. Now, this law says nothing about all these existing magazines. It doesn't differentiate between law-abiding citizens that would not mind going through some kind of background to possess them. I mean, if that's a barrier, we've dealt with it before with the universal sales and so forth. but it targets anything over 15 rounds. Again, it's sold to the state and the citizens as a big lie. It will not save lives. There are enough of them floating around, and the fact is, just like drugs flow through our borders and our state boundaries, magazines will too. Who does this affect most? Who will comply with this law? The law-abiding citizens will comply with this law. And is what I heard somebody say that. I'll tell you, I'll get off track here a little bit. I thought about creating a co-op for all my family and friends and unborn grandchildren. I have children. Create a co-op with a fractional ownership of all my semi-automatic firearms and high-capacity magazines to circumvent this law because it's so ridiculous. And I don't think my children or my grandchildren should be preventing owning something when I've raised them around firearms. They understand firearms. They respect firearms. But I don't think they should be prevented from owning a part of American history and should be treated like criminals. I just do not believe that. So that law is most likely to go through. Again, it targets law-abiding citizens, and criminals are not calling. I'll tell you, the people in the jail have not sent a message to any of my staff saying, would you have the sheriff come in here and explain these gun regulations? Because I want to make sure when I get out of here, especially those that commit murder and robbery at gunpoint, they're not asking for me to come down and explain them. The next one is, Oh, I'm sorry. I'm flying through these. That was 1224, House Bill 1224. And you can access all of these online. Just type in the bill title, House Bill 13, the year, and then 1224, Senate Bill 13-197. The next bill is they had a cost for backgrounds. I forgot to mention that they can charge citizens for the cost of a background. We know it was really tied to it. The state was trying to avoid any kind of a fiscal note because if they have a fiscal note, they'll kill them. Which also reminds me, possession of high-capacity magazines, if you buy them, trade them, give them away, take possession, after the law goes into effect, you're committing a Class 2 misdemeanor. Wow, they're really taking that one seriously, are they not? Well, they made them all misdemeanors because it creates an unfunded mandate for counties. It does not create a fiscal note for state government, and they knew if they attached a fiscal note to the state government, the bill would get killed purely on a fiscal note basis. So for Senator John Morse to, thank you. For Senator John Morris to claim that the sheriffs don't need a pay raise because Sheriff Makita seems to be doing fine has no weight to it, has no bearing to it, because sheriff's pay raises come out of the county commissioner's coffers, not the state. And his requirement where he says, I don't want to create a mandate on struggling families. Well, I'll tell you what, he sponsored a bill last year to increase his daily per diem at the cost of state coffers and taxpayers. But that's another topic for another time. I just wanted to throw that out there. Anyway, I think I've captured. Amy, did I miss anything, or do you want to make some comments? Or here, you can just talk into this.
Get this one going. This one doesn't. I can yell. Test, test. Test, test. Test, test. Folks, I appreciate this so much. The sheriff coming out and talking about these issues. I just want to tell you, first of all, Commissioner Littleton just mentioned that there may be some folks here who want to know what gun people look like. I want to tell you, you look around, and here's the word. If the media doesn't get anything out of tonight, here's what I want the media to get. Gun people look like free people. That's it. And I am one. So we all are one. We are free here so far. What I want to just mention to you quickly as we go through these, we've got a lot of questions that have been summarized, and we'll get to all of your questions for the sheriff and for the county if you have any of those. We at the Board of County Commissioners, we will do everything we possibly can to defend Second Amendment rights in El Paso County. I regret that we are fairly limited in what we can do, and if we could do more, we would, and we are looking into every possible option. The sheriff has a lot of great ideas that I know he'll talk about as well as to how we can fight these things, but you all need to know, and I'm just going to be very direct about this, that as far as I can tell, the legislators in Denver on the Democrat side are not listening. You all know that. They are being told to toe the party line, and so you all need to contact our governor, and you need to take the ink out of his pen, because that's one of our last hopes right now. Now, that's not the last hope. We'll keep fighting. We're going to keep on fighting, but right now in these bills, we need to go after the governor. We still need to go after the legislators, but they've been telling people, we're being told what to do, and we're going to do what we're being told what to do by the party apparatus. So we are going to fight under the authority that we have at the county, which isn't much, unfortunately, but we're going to do everything we possibly can, both as citizens and as county commissioners. I was also told that the first two bills that the sheriff referenced were brought back today. Those are those two bills that he talked about being brought back on May 10th. I was just told that those were brought back today. I don't have my computer to take a look at that, but folks, we have a battle. We have a battle for the heart and soul of this nation, and I am thrilled that every one of you are here. Thank you for being here. We're fighting right alongside you, and we're thrilled to do it.
Great, thanks. Okay, now's the time. You were going through some of the bills. You've heard them tonight. 1229, House Bill 1229, Universal Background Check. Senate Bill 197, Domestic Violence Bill. House Bill 1224, the magazine limitation. Begin writing your questions. We're going to have them passed towards the aisles, and we've got runners who will be coming to pick up the questions. While we're waiting for some of you to get your questions written, we did have a couple that were handed in earlier. We're going to go ahead and have the sheriff begin addressing those. So if this is a question that you were going to ask and it's already being addressed, you can save your wrist and your pencil. If, and this goes to federal legislation, if Feinstein's bill goes through, EPSO does not enforce the federal's law, can the public use firearms federally prohibited at all shooting ranges and not be illegal?
If I understand the question, I'll assume they're talking to the federal gun control legislation being proposed now. The only one that has to enforce that act of Congress would be federal law enforcement agencies. Right now, that bill that he or she, I don't even know what it is. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that in a disrespectful way. Oh, wait a minute, I didn't. The Feinstein bill is being torn apart right now. Many components of it is unconstitutional. Now, some of it is recirculated from the Brady ban that occurred from 1994 to 2004. A lot of it is a reincarnation of that bill. They didn't have the votes to revive that, and it expired without any action being taken. But the fact is, the president doesn't have the authority to direct local law enforcement, nor does Congress have the authority to force local law enforcement to act as their agent. The Supreme Court has ruled on that, has spoken to that issue, and it's not even up for debate. So the federal law enforcement agencies can run around and do it. But here's an interesting note about the last assault weapons ban and this current one being proposed. The Department of Justice, twice the Department of Justice, the Urban Institute, as well as the American Journal of Medicine, all came back with studies, which I'm sure some of those entities wished would have supported that ban, and said it was ineffective. It did not stop the number of wounds an individual receives as a victim of gun violence, and it did not reduce the total number of victims in one single shooting incident. They all of them universally came back, 4 studies came back and said it was ineffective. And I think that's an argument that Congress has to overcome, but I'll let them debate that. I don't believe they have the votes on it, and whatever comes out of Congress, I'm not inclined to support anyway. So that's my stance on that. I do, for the sake of time, I do want to clarify something, and this is not going to be the most popular thing to say. I've been asked a lot, Sheriff, are you going to protect our Second Amendment rights? Are you going to fight for us? The answer is absolutely yes. I'm doing it now. I don't have to talk about it. I'm doing it. Thank you. But I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Thank you. Now for the part you're going to boo me or not like me for, but that's okay. That's why I get paid the big bucks, according to Morse. Those quotes up there by Ronald Reagan, I believe in. Absolutely. And I have statistics to show his wisdom back when he was governor when it comes to violence and crime on our streets. Having said that, I have always said if the Colorado legislature passes laws through a lawful process, the legislature, and it is signed by the governor, I will have to support that law. Now, I say that because depending on what the law is, I will never compromise the liability for the Board of County Commissioners, and I'll give an example. For instance, the domestic violence law, I do not agree with. I'm opposing it, and I'll do everything within my God-given power to defeat that bill. If it is passed, I don't see right now where the courts can make me go out and seize those weapons. I would encourage the courts to give a cool-down time. But if an individual or a court does order me to do it, and I do not do it, and that individual does take a life, the county and me and my office would be civilly liable in a wrongful death. I am not going to do that to the taxpayers. I'm not going to let attorneys and criminals and others get wealthy over taking a stand like that. So when I say I won't do it, I have to weigh it. And I'm not going to put the Board of County Commissioners, in essence, you taxpayers, in a position of liability. And I want to get that out on the table first. This high-capacity magazine issue, I don't know when you bought it. You see what I'm saying? And during the ban years, they said this magazine or this weapon is for law enforcement military use only. Well, that ban settled, so now we have citizens. I own some, and I'll be out of law enforcement here in the near future, not too near. Let me finish my job here. But I can't tell you when those were sold, bought, and purchased. As far as I'm concerned, they were all pre-July 1 if the governor does sign this bill. Now we'll go on to another question.
Thanks. As you're writing your questions down, it is really important to us to know if you want to get further information from El Paso County. Would you please put your name, phone number, email address, if you feel comfortable, on the back of your question. If you don't feel comfortable identifying yourself and putting it on the back of your question, if you'll raise your hands, we'll pass out a card. We also have a sign-up sheet. I'm going to start that and bring it down and start passing it around. We would love to keep you up to date. Now, if you put your name down, you're opting in to getting information from El Paso County, so I want to make that clear, okay? It's not an opt-out, it's an opt-in, because that's what we believe in. Next question for the sheriff. Does Bill 1229 mandate that people with concealed carry weapons permits show that their gun was bought with a background check or the police could take it? And if so, how do you show this?
I'm looking at 1229 so I get which title that is. No, you don't have to show proof you had a background check if that's what you're asking. Let's see. Let me double check. Mandate that people with a concealed carry show that their gun was bought with, so no, police can take it. No. Next question.
That was easy. I've never seen him answer a question that quickly. That was great.
The answer is simply no. And I mean, I don't ask where you bought your firearms. I don't ask you to show receipts. You're coming in to the sheriff's office to get a permit. I don't care if you own a gun or own 100 guns. I don't care. So that's why I could say, no, you don't have to.
Okay. There's some of those. Mr. Makita, as our elected sheriff and highest-ranking law enforcement officer in the county, will you uphold the oath of office you took to the Constitution and arrest government agents who illegally come arrest people for exercising their Second Amendment rights?
You know, I'm very fortunate to live in Colorado and have the residents we have, and I would step in the way if federal law enforcement was acting under some directive and seizing weapons without a lawfully signed warrant. Now, I want to say something to you. I guess since we're not in New York City and Chicago, we don't have to worry about that because I've received emails from federal law enforcement agencies, all branches of federal law enforcement, thanking me for taking the position that I've taken, and they believe in what we're saying. And I've always said that a lot of times law enforcement, especially federal, they want to go live among people they share values and beliefs in. And our ATF and our FBI and our DEA, they are members of our community. They live here, and they agree with the way we live, and they agree with our freedoms and the right to walk our streets and so forth. So that's something I'm really not worried about. I think they would turn first. I think they would quit and join me before they would follow out something as ludicrous as that.
And I think this is a follow-up question to that one by another constituent. Are you a member of the Oath Keepers?
Yes. And I want to expand on that a little further. And I put this letter up on my website or on my Facebook. I don't even know how to do Facebook. Thank God I have a wife that does, and I have staff that do it work. But I want to tell you my position on it because I don't just talk about it, and I don't have to belong to a group to define who I am. I put the quote up there from Ronald Reagan because I believe in it, and I believe it's dead on, and I applaud his wisdom at the time he made those comments. But I want you to know that every recruit graduation, and anybody that has attended one of my recruit graduations, will tell you that a recruit does not get sworn in without being reminded that our powers come from citizens. And if we abuse those powers or misuse those powers, our citizens can and will take them away. And once taken away, and these are almost my exact words, once taken away, it's very, very hard to earn back. So never tarnish the trust that's been given to you and that extension of power from our citizens. That's in every speech I give to every recruit that graduates out of my academy and takes an oath of office as a deputy sheriff. That, I think, in of itself says how important it is to me. And I've never forgotten it, and I stand by it, and I live by it.
Next question. After the governor signs the bills, which we hope he doesn't, when will they take effect?
If I recall correctly, the bills take effect July 1 after signature of the governor. If somebody feels I'm off a day or so, let me know. But the last bill I saw, it does, or the last indication, they take effect July 1 unless the legislature can declare it as such an urgency of public interest. They could set a bill with an earlier date. That would be very unusual.
Now this one I'm not sure that Terry's going to have an answer to, but he certainly will have an opinion, I'm sure. Why is the federal government buying all the hollow point bullets by the millions, posted in the paper and on Drudge Report?
Billions.
Okay, whoever wrote it down missed the M.
Billions, millions, billions. You know, I don't have the answer to that. Originally, I started hearing rumblings of it, and I've been watching this ammunition so-called shortage for some time and coming up with my philosophies on it. Obviously, the Department of Defense is one of the largest purchasers of ammunition. We have been involved in conflict over in Iraq, Afghanistan, and other parts of the world, trying to maintain peace and protect the rights of people in foreign countries, I want to stress. And I think their supplies have been somewhat reduced, and I'll give them that. I think there is an impact to that. However, I think that's where transparency in government should be very prevalent. And I don't have the answer to it, and I don't know who has the answer to it, but I think as citizens, with the tax dollars being spent, if they are buying billions and billions, and if it's not true, they have a responsibility to come out and say it's not true. And if it is true, they ought to offer a logical explanation, because all it does is create suspicion and more distrust. And I have never seen distrust of government at the level it is today, and it's been growing for years. And I said, and I said some time ago, several weeks ago, that if our president was truly a leader and our governor was truly a leader, they would come out and get in front of this thing. They would come out and put people's minds at ease that their right to own firearms and ammunition and have a supply of it will not be taken away because it's a fabricated rush. And I feel for all the people that feel they have to go out and buy ammunition today because it may not be available tomorrow. Using your discretionary money during a tight economy, I think, is ridiculous. And I would like to see some leadership, if he could buy it, our president, come out and take a leadership role. And I would like to see our governor stand up and say, I will protect your rights, and there is no need for you to rush and start building your stockpiles of ammunition, because I'll do everything I can to make sure you can buy it any day of the week. And that hasn't happened. But I didn't answer the question. I didn't answer that question because I don't have the answer, but I think we ought to expect some transparency and honesty.
Agreed. I think we all agree with that. If someone, okay, are we on? Not yet? If someone who does not even know me, I don't know what's wrong with my mic here. Got it changed? Okay. If someone who does not even know me files a restraining order against me, am I required to turn my weapons in?
Ooh, that's a very good question, because I just was debating that with my undersheriff before I came over here. We were having a discussion about that. That is one of my concerns about the so-called domestic violence bill, is that it could affect people under not just a restraining order from a neighbor, but let's say in some states, and Colorado used to do this a lot more often, the mere fact you file for a divorce, there's an automatic protection order put in place. Now, what bothers me about the way the bill is labeled is it refers to civil protection orders to prevent domestic violence. And I am very concerned that under that scenario, it could extend to two neighbors having a conflict and a restraining order is put in place, that would require that. Typically, when bills get signed by the governor, they go through the Attorney General for interpretation. I've had some people tell me, no, it is specifically designed to restraining orders. The courts use other terms for the orders in cases of conflict, like civil conflict or something, and that it should not apply to that. But I've seen laws interpreted that restrict law-abiding citizens' rights in many cases. So I'm waiting to get clarification on that, and I don't have the answer. I sure hope it doesn't. I really do hope it does not. And if it does, then we need to seriously do something about it.
Technically on Fort Carson, who has the enforcement jurisdiction on that complex? This directly relates to the federal legislation being considered. We must know this and to be able to make an informed decision as to whether or not to use this range.
Well, that'll be an interesting question, because under the Paso County, I think I'm saying it right, the military Department of Defense cannot engage in civil law enforcement. So let's just assume that that still stands true and remove them from that point. It was built and designed as a public range. And right now, every citizen that goes down there to shoot in excess of 30-round magazines, I am sure own that magazine before July 1, and they are not violating any laws. I'd have to also ask our attorney, because then I'd get into legalese about the agreement, but it's my understanding that although that range is on a federal reservation, I thought we had protections written in, but I'd have to defer that to the county attorney, who's not here.
Can the city and the county use the 10th Amendment to nullify the bans?
refresh my memory, 10th Amendment.
States' rights.
States' rights.
States' rights, 10th Amendment.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big argument is the states' rights. That's one of the, a matter of fact, I got an email. I've received hundreds, probably approaching thousands of emails just in the last week and a half. And this one individual was actually a Second Amendment attorney out of D.C. that worked for Congress for some time and has done in-depth search. Actually, he brought up the 10th Amendment, but you got to love attorneys. You never get a short answer. It's like 15 pages long, but I found it very much of value, which gave me an idea to fight the background check one. But he stated in his opinion that Congress cannot extend it onto states, and that it only impacts at the federal level, federal law enforcement. So I think we're okay on that, and I think it is a valid stand. The concern is these bills that I talked about that are being proposed right here have been pushed out, number one, by Bloomberg and his cronies, to be quite honest. And when the Vice President of the United States, I would think he has more important things to do with our nation than call Democrat representatives and senators and remind them they better vote a certain way on gun bills. It tells you they're connected to these, probably because federally they can't really impact it, but they can push states to do it, and I think that's what we have in front of us. So the ones we need to focus on are the ones that our own governor will be signing, and that's where we need to stay focused. But I do think there is a lot of validity and strength in exercising states' rights to keep the federal government from mandating what we do.
Does a citizen who has owned a number of guns that were either bought or gifted many years ago and are not known to anyone by other than the owner be required to report or register them? I could guess his answer on this one.
Yeah, I would say, the answer is no. You know, there is no registration in Colorado. And let me tell you, all right, let's do it real quick and then down.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's a strength of Colorado, and I think it's something we need to treasure. And I'll tell you that one of the reasons a vast majority of sheriffs around this state are opposing these bills and all aspects of these bills is because they are concerned that this is a stepping stone to registration. That's what they believe. And I think that's something that we need to pay very close attention to come next election, during this possible recall, and at other times, that we will not tolerate that kind of intrusion on our personal property rights.
In relation to businesses reselling magazines to out of state, what kind of compliance issues or harassments will we face?
I don't know that I have the answer to that question. I know you can manufacture and ship out of state, but I don't know if that requirement to have a date stamp on it applies. So I'm going to have to do some homework on that one. I told you you're going to ask questions I'm not going to be able to answer, didn't I? Mm-hmm. Okay.
In light of the horrendous legislation, I do take comfort in the efforts of El Paso County Commissioners and Sheriff's Office. If these laws are passed, are there any other counties or municipalities that I should not feel as comforted with within the state of Colorado? Basically, where do they not want to move to?
Yeah, I would try to avoid the state of Denver and Boulder. Definitely those two come to mind. You know, I'll tell you, outside Colorado, I wouldn't move to Chicago. Number one, your life will be threatened every day because their homicide rate is twice that of Houston, and I always thought Houston was a dangerous city.
So, and you may not know the answer to this one either because this isn't your decision to make, but I think one that we'll look at and address in the future. Will the city of Colorado Springs assist or hurt in protecting our Second Amendment rights?
I think that's a great question. It needs to be posed to our mayor. We are under a strong form, or a mayor form of government, and I think that's a great question for him to answer. I will tell you, across the state of Colorado, police chiefs have been more in support of these bills than sheriffs. They seem to be 180 degrees out from sheriffs. Now, I say that because not all chiefs are standing behind the Chiefs Association and supporting these. I don't believe that our chief is in support of these, and I hope it continues to remain that way. And I think Colorado Springs has a very powerful tool that I would like to see them explore. And I haven't been able to have this discussion with anybody. As I said, I've been very busy, but Colorado Springs is a home rule city. And I wonder if Colorado Springs as a home rule city can exercise that status and exempt themselves from this legislation. I don't know the answer, but I think it's worth exploring.
And again, I think this one's going to be more opinion rather than factually substantiated by you. Homeland Security purchased $1.6 billion, we got the billion, not the million rounds, and over 2,000 AR-15s. 7,000, okay, 2,000 here. We'll correct, they got the billion,
She
right?
obviously is over 40.
Thanks, Terry. I do have to remind him, he did sign my concealed carry weapons permit. Is this because the state and local police cannot be controlled by the feds?
You know, as I said earlier, the Supreme Court, they came out and ruled, I think it was Prins versus the U.S. government, that is one of the key mark cases. The Supreme Court said the federal government cannot mandate or expect local law enforcement to act as their agent to enforce their laws. I mean, I think that one has been settled, and it's one that, that I will stand by, and I hope all law enforcement will.
Okay. Some of these laws are unenforceable without some form of eventual registration of gun ownership. This seems the next logical step. Do we have recourse in the courts, acts of civil disobedience, etc.?
I think I kind of touched on that, but I want to expand a little bit on the enforceability. That was one of the big arguments from the sheriffs around the state of Colorado, including mine. The ban on high-capacity magazines is absolutely unenforceable. There is no way to enforce it except, and I think we need to educate on this, my concern is law-abiding, honest citizens will maybe be the highest probability of finding themselves being charged with these crimes. As I tell you, the bad guys, I mean, half the time they won't even give us their name. I've never had a law-abiding citizen not tell me their name. And that's one of the things that we have been very, very persistent with, is you are writing a bunch of laws that are completely unenforceable. Even under the background check between private party sales or transactions. If I decide, my grandson, let's say he decides to give a rifle his grandfather gave to him to his uncle or something. I mean, it starts getting so ridiculous it's not even enforceable. And when you have a law that has more gray areas and questions than answers, it ought to fail the smell test right away, and it ought to be killed.
There are 4 questions that are very similar in nature, so I'm going to address all 4 of these at one time. And it talks about, and I'm going to answer this a little bit myself before handing it over to Sheriff Makita, says, how can the state pass laws legally without hearing the private citizens' input? Does the Constitution not guarantee that we can be heard in the processing of the law to begin with? What is the most effective way to influence our representatives and senators? They don't seem to be listening to us. They're not listening to us. What do we do? Now, I will tell you, recall is one course, and we're going to talk about possible solutions later on tonight. But I will tell you that because I had very little confidence, I've been testifying on many different bills this session, whether it was sex education in kindergarten through 12th grade, when we already have comprehensive health standards. I know. I was on the State Board of Education for 7 years, and on August 3rd of 2010, we adopted the comprehensive health standards that were fair and balanced, and we consulted the entire state about them. And they didn't want to listen. They voted for it anyway. And so, anticipating that, I began telling my constituents and anybody that would listen, write to the governor, ask him to sharpen his pen. I would like to just give a kudos to Mark and Helen Sabin, who are here tonight, I think somewhere helping us. Mark and Helen, I was going to have an opportunity last week. I went up and had about 20 minutes with the governor along with some other commissioners who are doing oil production in their counties. And we decided, we got about 100 different elected representatives to sign a document saying, Governor, look at you, we want to thank you. You made a good decision that was well informed, you had data, and you went against what was sometimes popular public opinion to do that because it was the right thing to do economically for our counties and for our state. Thank you for making a good decision. With all that in mind, since I knew I was going to have 15 minutes with him, I asked the Sabins to put together a sheet for me of the top 10 reasons, a la David Letterman, on why he should veto all of the gun bills coming before him. And I said, sir, we've written your script. All you need to do is read it, and I'll bring you your pen. So what can people do, Terry? You know how you weren't listened to. Tell us your experience and what we can do.
You know, there's several things that I think we all need to do, and I want to just give some of my philosophical thoughts on this. What they would like is for you to get frustrated and not say anything. They would like for you to do what a lot of citizens do, and I'll tell you, I mentioned all the emails I've received. They want you to get discouraged. They want you to give up. They want you to throw your hands up in the air and say, it doesn't matter. They're going to do what they want. One person can't make a difference. What I say isn't going to be heard. It isn't going to matter. I can't change a thing. That is how they slowly oppress you and take away your voice and your rights by getting you to give up. That is first and foremost the most important. Do not give up. Do not, because they ignore you. I mean, I'll use Senator Morse as an example. He refuses to answer my questions. He has used every adjective ending in ly to describe his emotion rather than answer the questions I'm asking. Tell me why. Tell me why citizens like Dennis were not allowed or given the opportunity to testify. Tell me why you used 30 minutes for an individual outside this state when you could have handed that 30 minutes off. Now I'll be reasonable. Limit the citizens to 2 or 3 minutes, but say at least the first 20. I mean, if there's a pressing timeline at the end of the session, which it's not, at least offer an excuse. You know what I get? I get adjectives of how furious he is, utterly angry he is, how livid he is, how upset he is, how a person in law enforcement of my level shouldn't be making accusations without the facts. Well, I've been presenting facts, and he hasn't answered them. And that's exactly what he wants. And the reason it's quiet is he figures, I'm not going to respond. And I'll be honest, I think some of the media, especially around the Denver area, is on his side because they're not asking me. I know it shocks you. It shocks. No, wait a minute. Let me do my best impression. Shocks you to the core. Yeah. But is what he's counting on is I will quit. I will say, you know what, I've said my piece, it doesn't matter. I'll let somebody else pick up this battle. And that is how they silence. There should have been 500 people at that Capitol outraged at the behavior of the rules setting of that committee. So there's number one. Don't let them have you. Don't let them own you. Don't let them oppress you. Number two, hold them accountable. If we elected Morse, we elected Pete Lee, we elected any of our representatives, Bill Cadman or any of them, and they are not doing what we believe they should be doing, they need to know it. And they need to have absolutely no misunderstanding what your concerns are. And if they don't, then don't elect them. Hold them accountable. Too many times we elect these people and they're not held accountable. They don't say what they're going to do. They don't follow through. Or they decide their arrogance is more important than your voice and they're going to tell you what's good for you. When that happens and they won't listen to you and they won't give you a voice, there's a mechanism to take them out of office. And it's an uphill battle. It's not easy. It was not designed to be easy. It's a lot of work and it's going to cost money and it's going to take some footwork and some time and personal investment. But if you feel that strongly, then that's what you need to do. And I'll tell you another thing. There's all kinds of battles to take with litigation, filing lawsuits and all that, and I'm looking at that, and I'm talking to people that have really the resources to take that battle on. But let me throw something out that's in our Declaration of Independence. Again, I'm no expert. Certain things stand out in my mind and always will that are important. And there's a part in there where it talks about that all men are created equal and all have unalienable rights. Do you guys remember that? And what is it? The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? And that government is instituted among men. Say that again. From the consent of men. And when that government, and I'll paraphrase now, but when that government abuses its power, what is our option? To take it back. When I tell my recruits abuse this power, it'll be taken away, I'm not bluffing them, I believe in it. And I've seen law enforcement agencies lose their power. My point is, and I'm writing I wrote an article, I'm getting ready to post it, but there comes a time where we have to ask, is our legislature out of control and should some of their power not be stripped? All right. The tool, and I got to tell you, I'm somewhat disappointed in myself because I never envisioned I would be standing up here talking about this because I believe in our country, I believe in the people, and I believe in the system. So it's disappointing that I even have to say these words, but when government abuses its authority and does what it did to our citizens at the Capitol on very passionate, controversial legislation, shuts them down, I think it's time for the people to say, enough's enough, and how about we run a statewide ballot that requires 2/3 of the House, 2/3 of the Senate before any new law can become a law, before it can go to the government. Now, what would that accomplish? I'll tell you what, it'll make them more accountable and they'll have to get more people to buy into it. There'll be more deliberation, there'll be more debate. And a thing that may not be bad is since they are abusing their authority, I think they ought to be rendered somewhat ineffective. I think it should be written in that public safety, because that's what they like to use, public safety and things of general budget concern, education, those sort of things, those don't need to be voted on by a 2/3, but a new law that's passed, it should be, because it should make enough sense, and it should have gone through the deliberative process and vetted to make sure it targets what it's expected to target. So there's an option I'm just throwing out, because I've been thinking about this since that Monday, and I feel very passionately about it, and you probably saw that come out a little bit, but I just named a lot of options we have, and a lot of those options I've named, they don't want to talk about and they don't want you to know about it. And when a legislator stands up and thinks they don't need to hear from you because they know better, that is downright wrong. I don't care how you look at it.
I'm going to give Terry just a couple of seconds to take a drink of water while I just am going to read some statements I think that people turned in that we have to make sure and address here. The question is, where is Senator Morse tonight? Was he invited? So I can tell you, how did you all know about it? Did you hear about it? Does Senator Morse have ears? Yes. Okay. So
explain jury nullification. I'm having brain
he obviously puts earmuffs on. He can't read or something, because we had this advertised so many different ways. He doesn't want to be here because I think he might be a little intimidated to be in this room. What do you think?
Okay.
Well, there you go. That'll tell you. Another one is, and I loved this one. There's a North Dakota and a South Dakota. How about in North Colorado? I think we draw the line at what, Douglas County or something? This one I know many of you agree with, and it's a statement again. You're welcome to applaud because it is a very poignant statement. It says, what happened to the communist citizens of Russia and bloc peoples when the citizens couldn't have their guns? They sent millions to the gulag, never to be heard from again. May God help us to not ever get to that point. those are all the ones you've answered already.
Huh?
You answered all those already.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Sheriff. Do you believe that these new laws will negatively impact out-of-state hunters coming to Colorado? And will this RUCO revenge from hunting license, reduce our revenue from hunting license sales?
I think so. I've received, as I said, I don't know, thousands of messages via email, Facebook, every venue you can send a message. And I've had numerous people from out of state that have made the trip to Colorado to hunt tell me, I'm not coming back to Colorado. And it's because I've always seen Colorado as a free state, a Second Amendment supporting state, and your laws are getting so confusing. They're not blaming us. They just wanted me to know they stand with me and that their protest is going to be through hunting in Colorado, which will affect, especially our mountain communities, that is their tourist season, hunting season, which starts around the 1st of September, depending on the season, and runs through the middle of or end of November. And to towns like Gunnison and Rifle and Crested Butte and Taylor Park and all those areas, I'm just naming a few, that is a big industry for them. And it's a big money maker for the state of Colorado as well. You already heard about outdoor channel on television? I did hear about that. He was one of the emails I got too. He's moving his show out of Colorado.
Yeah. Just that we're losing revenue. How about that? Thanks to
so is Magpul, and either their contractors, their subcontractors will have to move with them. One of them's a 4-generation family-owned business that employs a lot of seniors. That's their number one subcontractor. They'll either have to move out of state or shut down 4 generations of business. Specialty sports is another.
Okay, here's a fun question. If a group holds a public magazine greater than 15 rounds swap to protest House Bill 1222 or 1224 after July 1st of 2013, are they safe from arrest in unincorporated El Paso County?
I'm not sure I understand the question. If you hold a 30-round, let's just say 30-round magazine swap, is that the question?
Like if you have one and you want to go trade one out, or yeah, kind of like a flea market.
I guess is what I'm envisioning is the magazine existed, and remember I said I'm going to create fractional ownership for all my family and friends and unborn grandchildren. If it's fractionally owned among everybody there, that's one of those laws I said. It's unenforceable. Law enforcement knows it's unenforceable. I think it makes a lot of people that aren't connected to reality feel very good.
So we'd have and like to recognize tonight our sheriff from Teller County, Mike Ensinger. Where's he at? Mike?
Where's Mike?
Mike, you're here. I know you are. Because he sent a note down saying that Teller County Sheriff and Teller County Commissioners support Sheriff Makita and El Paso County Commissioners.
Where is he? Where is he?
I don't know.
He left?
He left? Okay. He just
All right,
left.
Mike did tell me he was coming down to attend the meeting,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you, he's a great guy to work with. He's a good person, and I know he's right there with me on this stuff. There's no question about that. So if you have friends in Teller, they got a good sheriff in their county too.
Maybe we can make the map look like Colorado, like Teller and El Paso County, and then all others. Where were there you go, 2 area codes. Where are the funds that, where were the funds that we voted for last fall for the Sheriff's Department, the ones that are being threatened by John Morse? Oh, were there funds that we voted for last fall that are being threatened by
No, he can't touch those.
Okay.
$1.65 million, and these bills are going to cost us are coming out of every one of the retirement programs for the state employees.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
That's what that's referring to.
Okay.
Yeah. In other words, they're writing checks they can't cash, so they're pillaging other funds. Yeah. It doesn't have any impact on El Paso County, I know that.
I know it's $50,000 just for
Good things to look into.
Background checks are totaling at 1.6 million.
Okay.
We'll look into that. Okay, for House
So
Bill-
much for Senator Morris's families are struggling, huh?
Yeah. House Bill 1224. You and I are out at the gun range. We're out at the gun range, and you've got a 30-round magazine. You hand me the gun to let me shoot your new cool gun. Does that mean you've transferred a magazine, and are we both criminals?
Yeah, that, again, it's unenforceable, but in that legislation, the latest version, they did set a 72-hour rule on it, with the background component. So I think they opened the door to say that, yeah, if it's a lawful magazine, which I would say they all are, then yeah, you can transfer that while you're at the range to shoot. You can have your friends shoot it. Now, if they take possession of it away from your person for more than 72 hours, that's where the background check is required.
And just to kind of keep going on that vein of thought, this constituent says, I train people in proper firearms usage using my training firearms. Same thing. How does that affect them? They're handing it over, they're using it at the range.
Yeah, again, I think that's within the spirit of what they were trying to accomplish and fix in their messed up bills, and that is that you're probably not going to be training the person for more than 72 hours at a time. Matter of fact, I'm sure sitting up there, your bottoms are limiting the absorption rate of what you're hearing. So I think for those of you, and there was another question, those of you that are engaged in training and it's a bona fide class and you own the firearm, 8, 9 hours, 10 hours, you're completely fine and this should have no impact on you whatsoever. And while I'm at it, I had a couple others up here that I underlined. I already talked about what citizens can do to overturn the passing laws. And I'll tell you that this legislature just overturned a bill yesterday, and I kind of want to use this a scenario that one of our audience members used. We were at dinner last week, and he says, you know, Sheriff, you know what bothers me the most is we're so focused on all these gun issues, it's like a magician. They distract you with hand movement on the right while they slip something by on the left. Well, they slipped Senate Bill 0690 through, which completely a bill through that repealed Senate Bill 0690, which was the sanctuary city law passed in 2006. And that law really banned sanctuary cities and created cities from writing ordinances that prevented their law enforcement from cooperating with immigration officials. I was quite shocked and taken aback by that. They snuck it through while we were focused over here. And so today, we can have sanctuary cities, and they can pass ordinances that prevent local law enforcement from working with or sharing information with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And I think that's a real tragedy. Huh?
Some sheriffs in other states are deputizing.
He's like one of my permanent hecklers that follows me around.
Gotta love him.
I call him friend, too.
Absolutely. Some sheriffs in other states are deputizing larger groups of people, and this goes to your comment, too, to prepare for government invasion and gun confiscation. We need to organize and prepare here. Would you consider organizing something like this in El Paso County?
You know, I'll say this. Government, I don't see it realistically happening. If they began to initiate that, I would be right with all the citizens. Whether you're deputized or not, we'd be shoulder to shoulder. And if it took me deputizing you so you could own a 30-round magazine, then that's exactly what I'd do. And I want to say this. I want to further elaborate on that. I was thinking the other day, why is the Second Amendment the Second Amendment? Why isn't it the Third, the Fifth, the 10th? You know, it had to have a specific purpose to be number 2. And so I got with my research staff at home, my wife, and I said, we need to find the answer to this. I mean, I've wondered it, but it had to be very deliberate. Freedom of speech And in Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, there had to be a logical reason, and I want to know what it is. And I found the answer to it. And it was Madison who argued for it and felt very strongly about it. Not that Jefferson was opposed to it, but there was a compelling reason, and the reason was because it was the citizens that would defend the country at that time. They felt citizens were more powerful and more organized than the government. The government was weak. Now, that makes sense for the times. I think we all agree. But then they went on to say it also protects citizen from government. And I think that was a very important component of our Second Amendment. And when you look at the Second Amendment, it was not an accident. It's number 2. It was the second priority while they were forming a country. And they had 2 fears: foreign enemy and an overzealous, abusive government. That's why they had it in there. And it wasn't all about a militia. It was, they almost considered requiring every home have a firearm in it to protect themselves, because government couldn't always protect the citizens.
Awesome. You're on your own. So I passed around, for those of you that have not yet signed up, I know we had several sheets that were full, but I did pass sheets that are going back and around. So if you didn't have an opportunity yet, apologize. I tried to find clipboards, but apparently they're hidden around here somewhere.
I want to address another question here that I certainly would not want to go out. And the short answer, the question is, does the EPSO, the Sheriff's Office, have or maintain a database? Yeah, we have a database for concealed carry permit holders. That database is entirely separate. It is not shared with anybody. And as long as I'm sheriff, it will not be shared with anybody. Now, let me finish. If the state, and I'll tell you, during the CHP database that CBI had, I was one of the few sheriffs that refused to share that information. I keep that database only so I can serve you and make renewing and issuing concealed permits and changes with permits accessible, and I can share that information with you. If I was asked this question, what if the state passed a law that required you had to turn over all of your database information to the state? And I'll tell you what my answer would be. What database? I no longer have one. Okay, I have 3 questions I'm going to answer real quickly, and then Dennis has been sitting here so patient.
I'm getting to him.
I would like to make sure he has an opportunity, but I'm going to read all 3 questions and answer all 3. I should let my wife answer them, but she hates when I put her on the public stand, although she could be very compelling too. I'll give her that. Can we encourage you to run for a House or Senate seat? Are you running for governor? And are you running against John Morris? Thank you.
That was my next question I was going to ask. Beat me to it.
Oh, when will you be announcing your run for governor? I have no plans in the immediate future. Number one, I don't live in that Senate district, so no, I'm not running against Morris. My battle with him is purely on principle, and what I believe in is right, not to unseat him so I can have a seat. And no, I don't plan to run for House or Senate or the governor. I really enjoy what I'm doing now. I feel I'm in a great position to protect our citizens and carry out their wishes. And I think if I were to put my wife on the spot, she'd say, we've been through plenty of elections and we've had great success. Sometimes you just got to call it quits while you're ahead. But no, I don't have any plan to run for governor, for Senate, for House, or any of those. But I'll be a write-in candidate in the next election. But I say that knowing full well things can change. You know, I cannot standing by and seeing what's happening to our county, to our state, and at the federal level. And if I truly thought I could bring something to it to make a difference, then after taking a severe beating from my wife, in which all her weapons would be removed under the domestic violence law, then I then I would consider it. But right now, I think I'm effective right here. And I'll tell you, I work with some great people, some fantastic people. And when you leave this room, and if you see them in uniform, thank them, because they will lay their life down for any one of you people in this room today.
Okay, so what does the latest Colorado bill say about shotguns? How is this going to affect shotgun purchases?
I wasn't sure I heard that right. Oh, about shotguns? You know, there was an amendment that actually I think it came from the Independence Institute. Mr. Koppel, if I'm pronouncing his name right, he pointed out to the legislature that there was a flaw in one of the bills that restricted or would have named shotguns as assault weapons. And I think he got them to amend that for shotguns, for those models of shotguns that have extended tubes. As far as I know, nothing up here right now will impact the purchase of shotguns.
Okay. We have a lot of different questions. What can people do to overturn the Senate's decision on current bills? I think there was someone, is Nathan Fisk here tonight to talk? There's about an initiative that's going on, the website they can go to find out about this initiative. Is he here tonight? I don't know the name of the website. There's an initiative to be a citizens initiative to look at putting an initiative on the 2014 ballot to reverse and rescind any of the legislation that has been put into place. If you gave us your email address tonight and your name, I will make sure that you get information about that particular citizens initiative.
I did hear about that there is a citizens initiative, which means it bypasses the legislature. You sign a petition. Every county has to get so many signatures depending on how many votes are passed, and it becomes a part of the Colorado Constitution, which means the legislators can't do anything about it.
Okay. I'm going to take real quick, because I don't want to run out of time tonight. Commissioner Lathan took a couple of minutes to talk to you. I'm going to give Commissioner Heisey just a couple of minutes to give you his comments. Commissioner Heisey.
Thank you. Appreciate you all coming tonight. This is an amazing turnout. It tells us how important this topic is to citizens of El Paso County. I'm an optimist by nature. I just kind of think things are going to work out. They always do. But let me tell you, we're going to lose most, if not all, of these bills by the time July 1st gets here. However, it's not over when the governor signs them. It's not over July 1st. It's not over because we have another election and we still live in America. When it comes to that next election, you know what you care about. Make sure the candidate you're going to mark the ballot for cares about it the same way you do. Don't assume because they have the right letter behind their name, they're going to vote on this issue the way that you think. And for that matter, don't assume because they have the wrong letter. You're going to find some good conservative Democrats from the southern part of the state, some of those farmers down there, you're not going to take their guns away. The other thing on that very same topic, when you're an independent thinker and you care passionately about something, it's not too hard to find a minority party that's their issue. And so you sign up with that minority party. I don't care if you sign up with them or not, you know, if that's the letter you want behind your name, because in November you can vote for anybody. But if you blindly vote for a minority party candidate when you know that person has no chance of winning, wonder if you're throwing away your vote. Just give that some thought. So it's not over. We've got another election coming, and we can win this.
Awesome. Thanks. Looking for the second microphone here. This is the time that we are going to now put into action our El Paso County fitness plan. And I have recruited my colleagues to have Commissioner Lathan be kind of these
Dave
two
has
aisles.
one.
And Commissioner Heisey is getting the other microphone. He's going to be these two aisles. If there is a question that has not yet been asked tonight, because many of them I have in my hand tonight are redundant of ones that have been asked, please raise your hand. Now remember, after 30 seconds, she's going to wave her hand, and they are going to gently begin pulling the microphone away from you. Okay?
And I will note that there was another question about this whole meeting, the TV news clips from this meeting being sent to all television stations in Colorado. I can tell you that we can work with our public information office to make sure that that happens, and that this whole live stream can be placed on our YouTube channel and accessed. And so we'll make sure that all the information shared here is available and that we can get more information out to other television stations. Another question again about the bills. Google Colorado State Legislature and you will find all of the bills in their entirety on that website. You just have to know which bill you're looking for. And I believe the Pikes Peak Firearms Coalition, which is www.ppfc.org, also has a list of all of these bills that you can track. So that'll help with those two questions. Okay.
Dennis.
Really appreciate tonight. This has been wonderful, hearing what your thoughts are and your support for the Second Amendment. The question is that if these bills are passed, what type of injunctive relief can we work on so that can have true judicial review given our rights as American citizens?
You know, I'm not an attorney, thankfully. I hope there's none in here that would be taken, no offense intended, but I am working with attorneys to see exactly what it is we can do. And that is a time-consuming process that I have. I know they're dedicated to this and they're working for it, but I think the first step is let's assume the governor signs the bill. Then I believe it will go over to the Attorney General for interpretation on a lot of these questions that were asked tonight, because it is so gray and foggy. And during that time, I think, is when I'm hopeful that right now, at least on the domestic violence aspect or bill, as well as the background bill, that we can find some little niche, whether it's under the 10th Amendment or another constitutional right having to do with due process or something, that we can at least get some type of court action to get an injunction put in place. I can't speak to it because I'm not a lawyer, but I know there are some very bright, good lawyers that are on our side on this. And all I can do is hope that they put forth the best effort they can and they can find those legal arguments to at least slow down this runaway train.
Okay.
That's the best answer I could give you.
Sheriff Makita? Hi. I'm sorry.
I saw him grab a mic and I heard a voice over here.
Surprise.
That's what happened at the legislature. I'm watching over here and they're passing bills over here.
Like, watch this hand.
Okay. Would you please address this group to the issue that happened to you last week up at the Capitol and the extortion issue that happened? And if, in fact, anything is being done to address that issue on your behalf, and if so, what we can do to support you in that effort?
Okay, let me do this as quick as I can, because I know you've been sitting here a long time and you've been a great group. On Thursday, at first I wasn't going to go up and testify because we've been so busy. And as Thursday drew closer, or a week ago, as the week began to end, I started reading the legislation to see where it was at, and I decided, you know, I need to set aside what I'm doing and I need to get up there. And I was scheduled to fly out of Denver on Monday at 10:30 for a meeting in Columbus, Ohio, the following day at 8. Well, I got a hold of my executive assistant who's sitting over here, and I said, you've got to get me the latest flight. I can't leave with this going on. I need to be at the Capitol, and I need to speak. I just felt very strongly about it. The rules on Thursday were your typical testimony rules. Get there, sign up. The testimony is going to take place. They're going to reserve the whole day for gun bills. I thought, great. I knew it was going to be a long day. I thought I would get to testify on 2 or 3. Come Friday, it began that they were going to hold bills simultaneously. Well, I've dealt with that before, too. I've been going up there for 13 years. And usually, if it's in the Senate, it's in the Senate hearing rooms, and typically they're across the hall from one another, or across the hall in one room one way or the other. Well, then I found out, no, they're going to hold them one round in the old Supreme Court chambers, the other one in the House meeting rooms, which meant 2 different floors of the Capitol. I thought, all right, well, I was fortunate enough. I had one of our staff members with me. He can monitor one. I can be sitting to testify on another. Then I can run down and hit that one. I've done that. I mean, I've worked my way through that. On Monday, March 4th, when I got to the Capitol, I was briefed that not only were those rules in place, that one sheriff would be able to speak on behalf of all the sheriffs, but the sheriffs could stand behind whoever was going to speak. I was approached by 6 or 7 of my fellow sheriffs who asked me to speak for the group on 2 of the bills, and so I was down on the Senate floor where we were having a meeting. I ran up to check with the other group to see if they had speakers covered, and they had taken care of some speakers. While I was gone, they weren't sure where I went. They got another sheriff to step in. So I said, that's okay, it's no problem. I plan to speak anyway. I signed up number 2 on the public speaking sheet for the background bill, and I signed up number 1 on the domestic violence bill as the first public speaker on that. I had my delivery down to 3 minutes because I figured it was going to be a 3-minute rule. I then found out that they decided the testimony would be limited to 90 minutes, and they had three categories of people providing testimony: experts, preferred, and public. And I thought, wow. And then I found out that expert speakers would have unlimited time, and then they would limit the preferred speakers to 3 minutes and the public to 3 minutes if they got to the public. And I thought, you know, I have never seen this happen. So I went to our Senate Minority Leader, expressed my concern, and I asked him, when did the Capitol go to this process? And he said, it's the first time I've seen it. In my 13 years, I have never seen a description of expert, preferred, and public. It's whoever signs up on the list is who gets to testify. Yeah, Chicago Shuffle, I've heard it called a lot of other things that I won't repeat in front of true men and women and gentlemen and ladies. But anyway, so I was pretty disheartened. He said, you know what, I'll get you on. I'll see if I can get you on the testimony as an expert, and that way you can speak. Well, he signed me up to speak on the background check bill, and the sheriff that actually spoke representing the sheriffs was limited to 3 minutes. You could watch it. I think they were recording it, or you could have watched it. I was the last speaker, and they did it where they allowed the proponents to speak first for 90 minutes, and then opposition to speak. Now, I think they brought some pretty good speakers in. They brought some victims in just like the other, but I don't think any out-of-state residents should have had any voice in our laws. And now, somebody said to me, I heard an article out of Denver, well, the opposition got to have an out-of-state speaker. Yeah, they did, but you know what? I don't think any out-of-state on either side, not if it cost a resident, and there were a lot of residents there to talk. If there was nobody else there, fine. But that was the first time I had ever seen those rules. That was the first time the Senate Minority Leader had ever seen those rules. And when I asked him, who established the rules for this? He said it was the Senate Majority Leader and the committee of the various, or the chairman of the committees that were holding the hearings. I said, okay. Well, when I left the Capitol, I did my testimony. Right as I was finishing my testimony, the chairman said, that is 9 minutes. We are ending all testimony on this bill, and we're ready to vote. And I said, excuse me, Madam Chair, 2 questions were asked of one of your previous expert speakers that they could not answer, and I have the answer to that question. And with your permission, I would like to answer it. And it had to do with the successful prosecutions of people turned down in NICS checks at the federal level. And I just read an article that 76,000 in 1 year were forwarded to ATF for prosecution, and they received a verdict or a plea on 13 of those 76,000 of the, I don't know how many, 500,000 background checks conducted each year. I know it's growing every year because citizens are worried, but she allowed me to answer that question. She thanked me, and I left. As I left, I saw people sitting in the hallway in the common area, standing around, and when a couple of them would come up and thank me for my testimony, I asked them, were you given a chance? They said, no. I said, what brought you here? They said, you know what? I feel strongly about this, and I just wanted to be a part of the process, and I wanted to have a voice. And I asked several people that, including the individual I recognized earlier. I ran into an ex-police officer from CSPD that brought his daughters up there because he thought a real-life lesson in civics, seeing the process work, would be better than her sitting in a classroom all day. And I told that citizen, I said, well, I'm sorry your daughters didn't get to see how it should work, and today was not a lesson in civics. As I left the Capitol, it was snowing. And it was about 4 o'clock, and I began to fume at what I witnessed in there. And it maybe, you can call me nuts if you want, but it really began to bother me that we had all these people that finally wanted to participate and be heard. And I'm sure many of people that could have offered a lot more insight and input, that maybe we wouldn't have such jacked up laws. But it bothered me that people drove up there in a storm, fought the Denver traffic, probably had to park blocks and blocks away. I parked 6 blocks away to be heard, and they were shut down and not given an opportunity. So I made up my mind before I got to my car. I'm going to Columbus. I have some meetings to go to, but when I get back, the first thing I'm going to do is clear my schedule, and I'm going to write an article about what I witnessed, because somebody has to stand up for the citizens. I'm not going to stand by for this. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. But let me finish. I got to Columbus at about 1:30 a.m. because the flight was late. Believe it or not, they forgot to fuel the jet on the tarmac. I found that kind of hard to believe. I got a whole other story I'll share with you later about that. But I got to Columbus about 1 o'clock. I got to my hotel, checked in at 2 a.m., and I've been sick, having troubles with my voice, and like everybody, caught the bug. It knocked me on my butt. I went to my meetings. I will admit I was late. I'm never known for that, but I was late. Those that know me will laugh at it. But I caught the next flight out at Columbus time. I think we departed at 6, which was 4 Colorado time. I was driving home from DIA, planning to go to work, and I hate to say this, but I actually looked down at my BlackBerry at an email, and I know, but let me just say, there is a law enforcement exemption, and I was engaged in law enforcement activity. I would like to say that maybe I pulled over and safely executed the reading of this email. But I saw this email that basically...
You wasn't texting, though.
No, I wasn't texting. It's emailing. It's different. But as I read this email, I'm beginning to think I can't believe what I'm reading. And basically, it was an email from the director of CSOC, Chris Olson, who I'm not very happy with right now. And he said he was at a meeting last night with members of CDAC, which is the District Attorney's Council, the Chiefs Association, and CCDV, which was a coalition against domestic violence. And I don't remember the exact acronym. It's not that important. But he said the meeting was very productive or something like that. And I know our voices were heard. And based on information that I received last night, and information from a very reliable source, that the Dems are very unpleased with the sheriff's stance on our opposition on these gun bills, I think we should reconsider our support on 197, and that we should that if we do change the support, it may kind of buy us goodwill and smooth things over. Now I'm paraphrasing, and I've been held to every word I speak to on this when I paraphrase, but that's the essence of it. And he goes on to say, I don't think we would be sacrificing our principles if you were to change your vote and support 197. And so I responded very tactfully, depending on your perspective, but I did not like what I was reading. A very reliable source, and you're telling us to sacrifice our principles and our stance on this? Absolutely not. I emailed, because texting is not lawful and it creates a danger, and actually more people die from texting-related crashes than firearms in this country. But anyway, as I'm reading that, I'm kind of dumbfounded, so I fired off an email saying, I see how it is. The Dems are upset, And so us disobedient sheriffs better get back in line. Well, from what I've heard from sheriffs and what I know, the Dems ought to be worried sheriffs are upset. That's how I took it, and that's what I wrote. And furthermore, I think that it is sacrificing our principles and our stance, and I'm really quite shocked by this. And I thought, okay, now I'm writing a letter about the way citizens were treated. I want to point this out, because this had to do with the salary bill for sheriffs. And, you know, you could sit here, and we're not going to debate that. You could be against that. It doesn't affect me. But I think not only do I need to speak up for citizens, I need to speak up for what's right, and I need to speak up for sheriffs and future sheriffs. The pay hasn't been adjusted since 2006. In 2006, the Democrats formed a commission to study salaries of elected officials at the county level, including the sheriff, and make recommendations based on solid facts and research to the legislature, so that they weren't making arbitrary decisions based on non-specific data. It was their process. The Speaker of the House and the Speaker of the House and the President Senate appoint the 12 members to that committee. It's their committee. So they are saying 2013 is the year to take action. So I took a little offense to this, and I said, you know what? This rings of extortion. If we don't get behind it, then our salary bill is going to hurt. Now, I'm going to be very honest with you. When I made the statement extortion, I was not in a criminal mode. I took it as, and if you could look at the Webster Dictionary version of extortion, it's to coerce. I mean, some action of that type. I said that. I know full well how this kind of stuff works, and to some degree it's politics, but I think when you're being so arrogant about it, and you tell your commission chairman who you appointed and your representative, I will not allow it to be introduced. Then you later say, I want 7 Republicans to sponsor it. When you don't hold yourself to the same standard on the gun laws, I think that's wrong. And I think he ought to answer to it. And if he didn't want to hear the commission, why waste those people's time to study all this, to come forward? Now, his excuse is it's a late bill. We shouldn't be wasting our time voting on late bills when we have other economic issues to address. This is not an economic issue to address. Furthermore, by design, under CRS, I believe it's 33-105 or 103, that's what establishes the commission. The commission, before it can present, they don't have the authority to draw or pull a bill title. They have to present before the combined local affairs committees of the House and the Senate. Then from there, it's up to a legislator. That's how the process works. It will always be a late bill by design of the law that established the commission. So yeah, I called Senator Morris out. That almost sounds like an oxymoron, Senator Morris, but no. Anyway, I called him out on it, and I said the Senate leadership is extorting the sheriffs, trying to bribe them to give their support on 197 when he knows we stand against it. Another sheriff said it's speculated we're being punished through the salary bill. Not just me, and I've had calls from 7 sheriffs saying, thank you for speaking up. Thank you for standing up, because I agree with you and it's right. And so there's been this debate, and all I'm asking him to do, explain why you changed the rules. And if you have any courage, then just flat out say, I didn't want to hear the citizens, so yeah, I went ahead and manipulated the rules. And you know what his excuse is? Because of expediency. Why isn't he supporting the salary bill? He's saying the Republicans have to support it. Now he's playing partisan politics. That's his admission. And I could go on for hours, but that's really what brought it up. And he probably expected I'd make my noise, and he would throw some antics around, and that I would back down. I'm not going to back down. I want those questions answered. I want to know why you set different standards for legislation. And oh, by the way, I got a new question for him. Why did you sponsor a bill to increase your per diem in 2012 when we have families struggling? Answer these questions. Okay. Did I answer your question? You know, I think it goes back to being the voice and holding them accountable. There is not a crime that has been committed, not yet. I think there's people that probably could testify if they were willing to step forward, and say, yeah, there's a lot of this going on. But this particular one, I think it's more about arrogance and the misinformation of his excuses that he needs to be held accountable for. I've heard of people wanting to contact the Attorney General. The Attorney General, unless there's a crime, they won't get involved, and it has to be a crime at the Senate. And the same with the FBI. They are the ones that investigate corruption. Right now, I think it's the voice of the people that he needs to hear, and I think all the Democrats need to hear, and they need to do what's right.
I'm going to gently pull the mic back from you. And we're going to have one last question. It's 10 after 8. I want to be respectful to the citizens' times. I told you that we would end at 8. One last question, and then I'm going to kind of wrap it up. And if we find out any more information on that, if you signed up for an email tonight, we'll let you know.
We all know the excuses that they're using to push these bills through. But I'd like to know, is there any investigation on the state or federal level that you know into the psychiatric industry and the drugs that they're pushing?
As it relates?
As it relates to the theater shooting, and
you know,
a lot of these Ritalin, Prozac,
yeah,
are all seem to be interconnected with all.
I haven't seen any specific studies on any of the medications, but I can tell you that is what the legislature ought to be dealing with if they want to protect citizens and address mass shooting incidents. They ought to look at the common threads. And I said this back when I wrote my article that gun control is not an appropriate way to curtail mass shootings or violence. It just doesn't work. It never has worked. But there are common threads, and mental illness is a glaring one that they don't want to tackle because I think they don't know how to get their hands around it. And I think it is, and it's not just about identifying, it's about making sure there's services in place to address the problems and back off some of these free handouts that are enabling people to stay poor.
But some of the drugs and some of the services seem to be the problems.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm sure side effects do, but I haven't heard of any.
Take this minute to thank Sheriff Makita coming to see us.
Thank you. Thank you.
While you're standing up, keep standing because we're going to get ready to be dismissed in just a second because I know you've got places to go and people to see. My poor husband, I just picked him up from the airport and brought him straight here for date night. How's that? So I'm sure he's ready to go do something else and eat. I'm going to have you this evening just remember that you can go to the El Paso County website, elpasoco.com, to get a lot of this information. It'll have the YouTube up. Share this with your friends who might have questions who didn't get to see this evening. My website as well, since it's my town hall tonight, is peggylittleton.org. We'll have a lot of that on my website as well. Want to make sure that you have access to that. And if you say unalienable, you are allowed to recite with me part of our Declaration of Independence as our closing. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and they're given their unalienable right. Are you ready? Let's say it again. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, amongst those life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Go forward. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Remember Buffalo Bill?
I do.
And TR?
Yes.
I tell you, doing your fundraiser healed me from that abomination.